This year marks the 500th anniversary of the Reinheitsgebot, the Bavarian law mandating that beer be brewed from only barley, hops, water, and yeast. Whether you follow this rule or break it every brew day, there's no better source of information about the core ingredients of beer than the Brewing Elements series by Brewers Publications. Collect all 4 books, Malt by John Mallett, Water by John Palmer, For the Love of Hops by Stan Hieronymus, and Yeast by Chris White and Jamil Zainasheff. Find them at brewerspublications.com and amazon.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, July 21st, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week we take part in a Brulosophy experiment. How will adding gelatin to a cloudy New England Pale Ale affect the character of the beer? And will Steve and I break our tie on finding the odd beer out in these triangle tests? Stay tuned. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first and click on our associate link. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show. We greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site. And there's a special deal for those who click on our AHA web ad this month. All new and renewing memberships through July 31st will receive a free copy of For the Love of Hops by Stan Hieronymus. That's a $19.95 retail value for free, just for either joining or renewing your membership through our AHA banner. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. We're on Google Play Music, too. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our virtual guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. Let's take a look into the mailbag. Nate from Concord, New Hampshire writes, I know this is up your alley, so I thought I would write in to ask about your experience with rye malt. After hearing your many shows about rye malt beers, I decided to try it out. I do love a low ABV, less than 4% beer, so it seemed appropriate with the summer here and lawns needing mowing. Nate says, I brewed up a 3.5% ABV Pilsner with 40% rye, 60% Pilsner, and a dash of Cara rye, a bit of Aurora Styrian hops, and fermented with Y yeast 2124. That's the Weihenstephan lager yeast. Nate says the thing came out pretty nice, but I did have a bit of a thickness to it, or it did have a bit of a thickness to it that is way out of character for a Pilsner. Have you noticed the same thick feel to the small rye beers you made? Nate says, I did find that once I cranked up the carbonation high enough, it cut through the thickness and made it just seem more like bigger body than it would normally have. I'm curious if you had the same experience requiring higher carbonation levels. Well, thanks, Nate. One of the drawbacks of using malted rye is that it produces thick wort that ends up with a heavy mouthfeel. But one of the advantages of using rye is that malted rye produces thick wort that ends up with a heavy mouthfeel. So the trick is to find the right balance of rye in the recipe. Instead of 3.5% ABV, shoot for around 2% ABV, or maybe 2.5%. I bet that will balance out the beer better, and you'd think with rye you'd end up with a cloudy beer all the time. However, I found that after a little while in the keg, even my rye wit made with rye and wheat comes out crystal clear. So I'd love to try a low-gravity Pilsner with malted rye. Maybe when the tap water temperature cools down a bit in the fall and it's easier to chill down to lager pitching temperature, I can try that out. So appreciate the note, Nate. Don't give up. You might try small batches to try to get your ratios with rye the way you like them before you scale up. I have to apologize to the members of Foam in Tulsa. My wife, Susan, and I were all set to drive over there for the Iron Brewer competition judging, but Desiree texted me and told me that there had been a severe windstorm that had blown through and had left large areas of Tulsa without power. Trees down and power lines down and semis blown over and all kinds of stuff. 90,000 people were affected without power. So we looked at the radar, and the thing was headed our way and across the highway that we were going to have to drive down. So we chickened out. Rather than driving through that mess, we decided to take the safe option and stay home. So we will have to take a literal rain check and come over there when conditions are more ideal. So I feel bad about that. I was really looking forward to seeing what you guys came up with in the Iron Brewer competition. But I know there will be other opportunities to get together. And next time, I hope that we can get Steve to come over as well. Well, speaking of our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa, I have been sampling my experimental 100% rye, sour, hoppy session beer for the past few days. It's like 1.6% alcohol. And it's my first crack at this style, at this kind of thing, and I'm pretty happy with it. I used my high-gravity electric brewing system to hold my wort at a steady temperature for 5 days while the lactobacillus did its thing. I used the system to pasteurize the wort. Of course, I used it to mash and collect the wort. And then I used it to pasteurize the wort. And then I chilled it down to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or around 49 C, and transferred to a glass carboy. I then cleaned the kettle and put the carboy into the system and surrounded it with water. And since the new temperature of my system is the new temperature sensor on my system is in the side of the kettle, the high-gravity system was able to keep the wort at that constant temperature over those 5 days with no problem. And we were even able to unplug it and use our clothes dryer when we needed to, and the thermal mass retained the heat pretty well. So you'll see all the details of that in an upcoming Basic Brewing video episode, but I just want to let you know how excited I am to have the ability with my high-gravity system to do higher volumes, larger volumes of kettle-soured beers than I have been just using my electric smoker that you've been seeing on the show. So anyway, just love the high-gravity electric brewing system. I know that Steve enjoys his as well. Check out all the electric systems that Desiree and Dave sell at highdgravitybrew.com. I'm playing this recording today from Baltimore out of order. We have plenty of other stuff from our tour around the Baltimore, D.C. area, including an interview we did before this with Mike Tonsmeyer, where he talks about brewing these delicious, cloudy, New England-style pale ales. It was something that was new to us. Less of a bitter punch than their West Coast cousins, but lots of hop character and hazy or cloudy to varying degrees. So this Brulosophy experiment centered on the effect of fining with gelatin on this style. So you can see all the details of the experiment on Brulosophy.com. And hats off to brewer Ed Coffey of Ales of the Riverwards for brewing such a tasty beer. Well, here we are in the Brulosophy Baltimore headquarters, here in the 11th floor of the Hilton Hotel. The Palace of Pleasure. Subtitled. And here we have the Brulosopher, Marshall Schott.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me back on.
Oh, well, thanks for having us. It's awesome that you've included us again in your experiment. And we have shall we just introduce ourselves in the peanut gallery around?
Matt, human.
Yes, you are. Steve Wilkes.
Mike Tonsmeyer.
Ed Coffey.
Malcolm Fraser.
General Beard Drinker.
Say your name, Andy.
Hey, Andy Sparks.
Say your name, Desiree.
Desiree Not.
Yes, you are.
Tom American.
Welcome, Tom. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to embarrass ourselves again by not being able to pick out the experiment. But so I don't know, we are the first to be collected data in this experiment?
You are the first victims of HomebrewCon Experiment 2016. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then later on, you're going to set up downstairs and get more data points?
We'll be down at the expo at a couple of the booths collecting more data, yeah.
And so I don't know, do we say anything else about the experiment at this point, or do we just taste it? Do we just pour it and taste it? I mean, because we can't talk about the experiment before we.
Yeah, because if anybody talk about really the recipe here, I might be giving away some variables. And
Yeah.
Maybe it's best we just taste it and kind of figure it out from there. Then
Yeah.
We'll talk about the beer afterwards.
What I would like to say, this Ed Coffey from alesoftheriverwards.com, he has actually collaborated with us and brewed the beers for this. So pretty excited about that. He brought them down from Philly.
Are they coffee beers?
They're not coffee beers. Yeah, really. Yeah,
technically,
all
yeah,
coffee
technically.
beers, right?
They by definition are coffee beers.
Right, yeah. Technically, yeah.
Yeah, you don't get that joke ever.
Yeah, not ever, no.
So for people who aren't familiar with the concept, 2 beers are the same, and 1 beer is different. So it's going to be a blind triangle to you guys. All right.
Okay. And, as usual, Steve and I are always lobbying for you to do, experiment like which Pilsner has red food coloring in it. Just something to throw us a bone.
Identify the lock.
Sometimes you need to win.
That wish has inspired many an experiment for me, actually.
see just how extreme it can be, so that even Steve and I can taste it out reliably. And I think Steve and we're still tied. I think.
Are we both at 0?
No, we picked some out, but I think that you and I are tied as far as being able to determine which one was the odd one out.
I think that you're right.
So
I'll go on record right now and just say blue.
The answer is okay. All right, so let's pause, let's pour, let's taste, and then we'll go from there.
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
Okay, we have 2 new additions to the. I invited Zot, and I forgot I did.
Many people have said that before. Thank you.
But at least I invited you, Zot O'Connor, and we have.
Chris DeGuano.
Did you know you were going to be a part of the podcast?
Not until I walked through the elevator. Enjoying it.
All right, so we have now taken the triangle test. Is anybody confident? No. Oh, Zot's confident, of course. Which one did you pick and why?
On the first hit, the red cup, the aroma was very different, and that never changed throughout. The taste was very difficult to tell the difference. So it could be a pour difference, but it stayed all the way through the process.
Andy?
I was not confident. I thought when I first smelled them, because that's usually my thing, I smell each one of them. I thought I picked a difference, but then when I went back through, I really could not pick it back out. I didn't feel like it stayed different. And then when I started tasting them, it even muddied my brain up even more to the point where I really struggled. In the end, I thought one tasted slightly better maybe, but it was just, I was grabbing at straws. I picked the blue one.
Okay. And this was a Hefeweizen, as we all... No. This is a nice hoppy beer, and as Andy said, it's a good thing that he liked it, because he kept going on to taste again and again. I liked it as well. Desiree, how confident were you, and which one did you pick and why?
I don't know if confident's a good word, but I picked the blue one. It seemed like the aroma was slightly less, and that again didn't seem to change much. And when I looked at the color, it seemed a little lighter also. And the flavors, the flavors are so close, close. Yeah.
And Chris?
Yes, sir. I guess the aroma was the first thing that hit me with the first glass, which was the red that I picked up. And then when I got to the second, I'm like, okay, well, the think I may be a little desensitized at this point. A little fatigued already, but yeah, there's grapefruit aroma throughout. But I think I picked the red. I think it had the more aroma than the other two. So,
Right. And Tom?
I am not very confident. I picked the blue. I thought it was a little bit of a sharper hoppiness, but other than that, I thought they were really close.
I think they were close too. Malcolm, you participated.
I participated, but I knew the variable, and I'm confident that I don't know.
Which one did you pick?
I picked green. I think it's green, but the reason isn't the variable. So I don't want to say. I don't want to say yet.
Okay, all right. And Ed, you're the brewer.
Yeah, and having brewed the beers, I thought I'd be able to pick it out super easy. And the first pass through the beers, I was pretty sure I had it. And then after you take a few more sips, palate fatigue on this beer kicked in after like 3-4 sips for me. Yeah. And I kind of was like lost again and second guessing myself. I think it's the green one. I'm not totally sure. I was trying to, we poured them, so I was trying to kind of like, like ignore what was going on. But I felt like it had a little more aroma, and there was a little bit of a like sharper bitterness to it than the other two. The other two I felt were a little creamier, kind of, a little creamier, a little smoother in body. But then I went through them again, and they all tasted the same. Yeah.
And you did a good job, though. All of them were tasty beers.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mike Tonsmeyer.
Well, now I'm feeling better after hearing a couple of greens. I picked green as well. I thought it was weird. The green and the red seemed the most different. The blue, I was then trying to decide if that was with the green or with the red. I thought the green had a little bit more of a raw kind of hop character, a little more, nose in the hop bag, and the red was a little bit more of that fruitier sort of end. But they were incredibly close, and I really didn't have a huge amount of confidence in that.
And Marshall, did you play?
I played, but I didn't win. I actually got it wrong in my blind triangle. I got it wrong. But I think this is a variable that it's sort of two experiments in one. I'll give you that. Yeah. So I don't know how much you want to go into it yet. What we did?
We'll wait.
Okay.
We'll wait.
Let's wait.
Matt.
Upon sniffing, I was actually I was mostly confident on green based on aroma alone. Mm-hmm. And when it came to taste, taste did not confirm that. So I just went back to the aroma thing, and I stuck with green. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was pretty confident. We'll see.
Steve?
Well, first I just want to point out that very few places in life can you say upon sniffing, and it has, and it won't be totally laughed at. I went with the red. I thought it was wetter and juicier than any of the others.
Little stallion cover.
Yeah. Actually, and when I say that, I only half mockingly, it had the most kind of bubblegum juicy fruit juiciness to it, in my opinion, and that's why I picked it.
Well, you and I are in the same boat, so we're tied. Whatever happens, we're still tied. I thought that red had the most hop character. I thought the bitterness was a little brighter, but boy, they were all close. I thought blue seemed to be the most different, but then green, I couldn't figure out which green went with, whether it was blue or red, and I decided that it went with blue, so I picked green. No, I picked red.
You picked red, right?
Okay.
So your method,
and I haven't even.
You tried to find to the match.
Well, yeah, I tried. Yeah, it seemed to me that
it's worth talking about.
Even though
people do these triangles differently.
Even though I lost track of where I was in describing it. It's a very strong beer. No, yeah, I thought that red and blue were the most different to me, and then green was kind of in the middle, and so I paired it. I thought it was less bright than red, so I paired it with blue.
So you took those two that you thought were the same, and then you taste them next to each other and say, are they still the same?
Yeah.
Is that how you do it? Yeah, that's how I do a triangle too. I was just curious because people do it different ways, and it's kind of worth.
And then I took a sip of water and I tasted like the green first and went through them, and then I took another sip of water and tasted the blue first, and trying to, it is a hoppy beer. There's a bitterness involved, and it's trying to nullify the palate fatigue kind of a thing. So, all right. So should we?
Drum roll.
Do we go to? Let's go to Marshall for the the results.
So there is, you've probably not heard of the controversy out there about hazy beer and this NEIPA, Northeast New England. Yeah. NEPA. Yeah.
I like that.
And so, and Ed is a big proponent of the hazy. I don't mean to speak for
No,
you,
it's
but
fine. Yeah.
juicy beer, whatever you want. And so, we started talking about how we might collaborate for this. And one of the things that we do, most of us at Brulosophy do, is fine with gelatin. And there's a lot of belief out there that by doing that, you're dropping out good beer character.
You're de-juicing.
You're How do you follow that? And so, but the other, that's the variable is gelatin. So if you're vegetarian, I apologize now. And so what the kind of the part 2 of the experiment was to see how gelatin reacts when used to fine one of these really high oat malt beers. And so I'll let Ed kind of talk about the recipe and
Yeah, so this is something Marshall and I have talked about a bunch, and this is like a pretty popular topic. People are either for hazy beer or against it. For me, it's all about flavor. Appearance is is different. But some of them go a little over the top with the haze. But with this beer, it's a pretty simple grist of just pale malt and oats. It's 18% oats. So it's gonna be pretty difficult to get that clear in. I brewed this 3 weeks ago, so it's pretty fresh. I brewed a 10-gallon batch all together, fermented out all together with a Y yeast 1318, which also is like a pretty, we're looking at the beers right now, and it's pretty difficult to tell the clarity between the two.
They look exactly the same.
Yeah, they look exactly the same. So trying to keep all things equal, I fermented the batch out in like a 15-gallon speedle together. Towards the tail end of fermentation, I dry hopped in primary to kind of get the little, little more hop character that way. And then I racked to kegs in a closed system, dry hopped in each keg with the same amount, and then I cooled them down, added the gelatin to one keg, left them both in the kegerator for about a day, almost a day, and then I used a jumper to go from that keg to a serving keg to make sure I'd left as much sediment behind on both beers to make all things fair, right? So, and also I'm going to be driving down here from Philly, so it's going to get shook up a little more. So I wanted to kind of remove that possibility. And then from that point, brought them down here and tried them, and I tried them twice. 2 days ago, the thing was ready, and I kind of really couldn't tell the difference between them myself, even just like pouring them both myself. And it's a pretty interesting variable to me.
Yeah, gelatin is a variable that we've done more with than anything else. That and fermentation temperature, kind of the two things that we've done a lot of experiments on. And so far, there has yet to be one that produced a distinguishable difference, while the difference in clarity is stark. And so what I'll usually do is pour samples like this and then let people pick. But like we were talking about, it doesn't seem that at least with a high amount of oats in the grist, that gelatin has much of an impact, which is something I've read before, that gelatin doesn't drop out. It's a permanent haze, yeah. Well, filtering, you'd have to manually filter it, I think, to drop that out. So.
Polychlor or something, yeah.
Right. One variable that Marcia and I kick back and forth is, the water profile of these New England hoppy beers and the higher chlorides of them. So we kind of tried to go somewhere in the middle, and we did a 1-to-1 sulfate to chloride ratio. So PPN on the chlorides is 100. So it's not like as high as some of these breweries tend to be going. But Marshall commented that they did an experiment in the past where it was difficult to clear high chloride beer.
It's almost impossible, yeah.
Yeah, so that could be a big variable as well. But I wanted to, if we're going to look at New England hoppy beers and see if fining or filtering them makes a difference on the beer, I wanted to try to get a little of that how you brew a New England hoppy beer.
So we tasted a cloudy hoppy beer at your house the other day.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the style, and I mean, between Ed and Scott Janis and I, we brew a lot of these, and it really has been that triangulating in, figuring out the water, figuring out how important are the adjunct grains, how important is hop timing, how important is
temperatures of hop timing in the whirlpool and
yeast
everything,
strain, all that stuff.
Right, yeah.
So what was the hop bill on this one? Because we collaborated in the recipe. But
right. The hops were Centennial, Amarillo, and Simcoe. Bittered with Columbus, but very, very small amount of Columbus. I mean, I think the IBUs on it are somewhere in like the 35 to 40 IBU range.
It wasn't a very harshly bitter beer.
No, and that's part of the New England hoppy beer style, where it's kind of a little more drinkable, or trying to be a little more drinkable, as opposed to the aggressive bitterness. A lot in the whirlpool, heavy dry hopping for 10 gallons, there was 12 ounces of dry hops in this.
And again, just for the, because we talked a bit the other day at your house, but just at 30,000 feet, what's the difference between this and a West Coast IPA?
So generally, you're getting yeast and hop interactions a lot more in a New England IPA. You're also looking for those sort of juicier, fruitier flavors that you're going to get from a more expressive yeast, generally working on hop compounds. You're also, again, favoring the chloride, giving you that rounder mouthfeel, less of that harsh bitterness from a whole lot of
which
sulfate.
dries the beer out.
Yeah, right.
It's
It
crisp
definitely
on the
does.
tongue,
Yeah.
and then the New Englands tend to be a little bit more malty, but not malty in like 1995 IPA, malty, caramely. They're still very light malt character, but they have a nice round. Round's kind of a generic word, but it's a soft malt instead of a sharpness that kind of like drops away.
Yeah, right.
So, are we ready to?
Big reveal. Here we go.
There were, I believe, 9 people who took this test here. Let's see.
We've got 3 guesses for each one.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
I can already tell it's not significant.
Eight people. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, at all. So 2 people got it right. And it was not James. Oh! Are we okay with me revealing who got it right? Desiree got it right. And Andy got it right. Yeah.
Oh, hey!
So,
All right.
but yeah, but the statistically that was just guess, right? We're just guessing. They were.
I was not guessing. I was not guessing.
I was picking the right one. Yeah. So so it would seem yet again that this kind of confirms that even though the gelatin didn't do what it was intended to do to the beers, that it didn't have a negative impact on the flavor. Now these are relatively fresh beers, but I think as homebrewers we drink fresh beer for the most part.
Particularly hoppy beer. This beer, when I make this should be gone in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. I do see it drop off. It kind of like still is good after 3 weeks, but you're drinking these beers fresh.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't mention about the process actually, when I used the jumper to the serving keg, the gelatin find, I put my hand behind it, and we'll do a blog post on this.
Yeah.
It was considerably more clear in the line with just a small amount in a serving line, right? So I can see my finger.
Right.
But once you put it in the glass, you really can't tell the difference.
I mean, there might be a subtle difference. The foam looks a little different, I think.
That's something I
which
noticed.
one is
That's
good?
gelatin.
Tiny bit lighter.
That's gelatin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy, they're close. And we can take a picture.
Oh,
of
you
that
know what?
and
This
put
is the
that
gelatin
on
one. I'm sorry. The clearer one.
It's just a little.
I mixed them up. It's barely though.
Now that you hold them up to the light, I do see like such a really barely.
But that oat haze, you can't get that out of there with gelatin alone, at least. But it's clear.
Did we talk about how much gelatin you used and how?
Sure. Oh, so I followed Marshall's process to a T. What is that? A half a teaspoon? Is that what you?
Yeah, half a teaspoon of dry gelatin dissolved in a quarter cup of hot water.
Right.
150 to 180 is what I aim for, and then I just pour that right into the. I pour it into the fermenter. A lot of people do it. Do it in the keg, and that works just as well. Carbonated beer works well with carbonated
And
beer.
I had to do it in the keg in this variable because I didn't want to find the whole thing. But so I just heated up in a microwave to 150, added the gelatin, threw it in there. I think it was about 18 to 22 hours.
It usually only takes about 12 hours in my experience for a 5-gallon batch to drop clear. It works quick. Yeah.
And you've done an experiment on different amounts of gelatin, right?
We've done we have. Actually, what we found was I did sort of an extreme. I think 2 packets of gelatin for a 5-gallon batch compared to our normal, half a teaspoon. I think it was 12 times the amount, and that beer remained permanently hazy the entire time. Yeah, no taste difference though. Oddly, yeah, I couldn't tell them apart. So it seems like this is one of those less is more type of things with gelatin. Yeah.
But you add a little bit more, and then you get beer Jello shots.
Yeah,
The bottom of that keg. Yeah.
And then the beer Jello later.
Do you want to ask the people who got it right what they got out of it?
Yeah.
As I said before, I wasn't very confident, and it really I struggled to pick one that I felt was different. My guess is it was random, that I just lucked out. Although I think I maybe am doing pretty good in this whole thing. I've scored pretty well in these, so I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to go back on the record and add you to the score. But Steve and I are still tied, though. That's
Many failures.
So Desiree, you seem a little more confident now that you got it right.
Well, I mean, I really did think that the aroma was different in the blue, and it really did look like the color was a little bit lighter in the glass. I was a bit concerned because it's also a lighter cup, so I didn't know if that was affecting it. But it seemed like the color was lighter, minutely, and there was definitely an aroma difference, I thought.
Did you prefer the aroma, or did
No,
you?
I liked the aroma in the other ones.
So did we say which the blue
It was more intense.
was the
aroma
was the
more
blue
intense
gelatin
than
or not?
Blue was gelatin. Yes.
Blue was gelatin. So, and then you prefer the
I
others.
preferred the aroma in the other two. It seemed more intense.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Were they all poured from different bottles?
Yeah.
So there's 3 different bottles?
Red with gelatin.
Yeah, different.
Oh.
It doesn't matter. There still was
Oh,
insignificant.
yeah,
No, that's right.
Blue and red were the same. Green was the odd
Right.
beer out. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Right.
Oh, but it was green was the odd one.
Or am I getting?
No, blue was the odd one out.
Blue was the odd one. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Blue was the odd one.
And blue was the gelatin.
Yeah.
Blue was gelatin. Red and green.
Blue was
Red and
gelatin.
green were
Okay.
non-fine.
Come on.
Starting all over again. No.
My heart started pumping.
Science.
There were 3 different bottles.
Yeah.
Because I would wonder about an experiment on something like aroma in an IPA, because it's such a very ghost leopard kind of thing to get that aroma in an IPA. And I've been doing other experiments finding that if you take a beer from a brewery that doesn't have a lot of IPA, or sorry, an IPA that doesn't have a lot of aroma, and put it in a growler, drive somewhere and then pour it, and it all of a sudden has a ton of aroma, that it's shaking out of the bottle. That I believe that's why I think doing an aroma experiment might be, you might just take 3 bottles and pour it and see if you got consistency, because it seemed like you actually had really good consistency on red. 2 of us at least said a red aroma immediately, but I wonder if that is.
3 of us said green, and 2 of us said.
But I don't think anybody else but Chris and I said red immediately on the nose, like no question. And I still stand by that. That the beers may be different, but the red aroma was radically different for me.
Well, I actually agree with that. I mean, I really thought it was different. It really seemed different to me, and I know it isn't. But so that's an interesting point.
Right.
Why did I perceive that to be different?
Yeah. How could they change
It was also the first one in the lineup for us both.
Yeah, it was.
So
Yeah, there are effects that have been studied, recency and primacy effects and all of that, and what they found is really interesting research on not necessarily triangle tests, but with most sensory type of analysis things, that if everything is the same, there's a trend towards picking the last one you tasted as being the different one. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, and I've seen that.
I've had people after trying those literally come up and argue. I mean, just like no way, these are not the same beers, and they're like, something happened in the package. And then on this particular case, it was kind of amusing because I only had 2 bottles and I was pouring them behind like a screen, so I was like, I only have 2 bottles, so these 2 beers are definitely different. I mean, they are. And he was, no, this is absolutely, yeah.
It happens every time, every single time. Yep.
well, you'll be doing these from kegs, right? Where are you going to be later?
2 kegs. We'll have 2 kegs pouring, with our backs turned. So 1 keg will pour into 2 cups, and the other keg will pour into the blue cup. Yeah.
So we'll find you on the floor later, and if we want to do it again, we can try it again.
Sure.
See if it makes a difference between the the bottle and the keg. That's another variable to throw in there. But
I may have to go do that again to see if I get the same result.
I'd quit if I were you, Desiree. I think you did good. Well, cool. Delicious beers and fun experiment. And are there any other questions or issues or?
But so the answer is there's really no reason to fine your New England IPA with gelatin is sort of the takeaway. There's no benefit. There's not much of an improvement in the clarity.
At least in the very young beer, it's not clarifying it. I mean, we're not noticing, an overwhelming difference. I mean, people are noticing their own differences, but there was no consensus.
Yeah.
But if you still want to do it, I mean, keep doing it. I mean,
Plus
it's not hurting the beer. It's not hurting the beer, and if it makes you feel comfortable, I mean, that's fine.
It may be worth doing. Doing again for a more extreme New England IPA too, because this is not a very turbid New England IPA.
Right. This is kind of like, to me, this is more like in the middle of the range of the hazy hoppy beers. I mean, this looks like almost like a hef, really. It's not super
It's
murky.
not murky. It's
right,
not
yeah.
muddy.
Right,
It's not,
yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
is that typical of New England IPAs to be murky and muddy?
Generally not the best one.
Okay.
This is to me. This
I just
is
don't
what
think
I
making
want.
A beer
I
that's
agree.
described
Yeah.
as murky and muddy is a good idea.
But I think some of the most popular examples, like Julius and most of the Treehouse beers, right?
Yeah, and the
they're-
beers from Trillium, they're pretty
They're
pretty
murky,
cloudy.
yeah.
I mean, you look at some of the ones that Tired Hands brews too. They can range from about where this beer is modeled after one of their beers, Hop Hands, their pale ale, and it's hazy. But then you look at some of the other ones, like these milkshake ones, where they add wheat flour, and that's another misconception about New England hoppy beers. Oh, well, they're adding wheat flour to all of them. That's not really what everyone does.
typical.
Yeah, it's not typical. It's done, but it's not typical.
There's a few do it for effect and for extreme, like the milkshake series.
Right, yeah, which is
And-
kind of a joke.
And they
Yeah,
also were
yeah.
using apple puree for get pectin haze.
Yeah.
And that
Oh
and that
my
mouthfeel.
God.
It's a gimmick. It's for fun. You know?
Yeah, and that brings up the question: if you're trying to clear these beers, and that isn't it trying to clear a Hefeweizen, which is a cloudy style, and it's supposed to be, or a Belgian wit, or whatever, these styles that are supposed to be a bit cloudy, and if you're trying to take that away, aren't you taking away from the style? Aren't you going away from the style?
Yeah, might you be losing something? And that's what I would worry about. You go through all the process of, me, racking kegs to another keg, trying to make sure I don't, expose to oxygen, keep that precious hop aroma. I mean, using over a pound of hops is expensive in a homebrew batch. I don't want to lose that. So I was concerned about the gelatin, but, it doesn't seem like we can really tell the difference.
Very nice. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Well
Travis.
done.
Well, thanks again to everybody who took part in the experiment, especially Ed Coffey, the brewer. Those were some tasty beers. And again, you can find the details of the experiment and the full results on Brulosophy.com. And I'll post a link to that article on our Facebook page and on Twitter. Always good to get together with the Brulosophy crew. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can check out our support link, where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. You get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks, where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. You check all that out at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are crystallized candied ginger chunks, unsulfured, 1 pound. And KitchenAid Artisan Series 5-quart stand mixer with pouring shield, pistachio. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association. And if you do during the month of July through our site, you will get a free copy of For the Love of Hops by Stan Hieronymus. You can also subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate link on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.